Thank you, Elaine. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you guys are all a little warmer than we are here in St. Louis. We got half an inch of snow overnight, so it's pretty cold. I was in Houston yesterday with 80 degrees, so for you guys down there, I'm missing your weather right now. So today we are talking ransomware. We knew this has been a pretty hot topic for everyone out there. We have more people on this call than we've had on any of the recent tips and tricks webinars. So I guess the first thing I want to do is I want to qualify my title here. When we talk about how to prevent ransomware, I am going to qualify this, and I'm going to say how to prevent most ransomware. There is no silver bullet. We say that all the time. There is no single one thing you can do. There is no guarantees anywhere because the technology is constantly evolving. The guys out there have figured out that they can make money off of this, so they're constantly pushing the limits and trying to find new ways of getting this in and getting you infected. But what I want to show you today is hopefully give you some ideas of what you can do, some ways you can have the WatchGuard firewall help you cut down and reduce your chances of infection and hopefully eliminate a lot of the cleanup that some of you have had to do in the past. So as we start into this, first thing I want to cover some basics, things that don't have to do with the firewall, but things that you should be doing in general when we're talking about dealing with ransomware. Very number one thing, and I really can't stress this enough, because if something does get through, if you do get infected, make sure you have an aggressive backup and recovery strategy. In certain cases, we've seen that people are paying the ransom and they do get their files back. However, we really don't recommend doing that, because if you pay the ransom, it's just to encourage the guy to do it that much more. So if you can, if you do get infected, if it doesn't get caught, last ditch, if you can recover from backup, you've saved yourself the money of paying the ransom from the ransomware. Next piece of advice on the basic stuff is if you allow users to bring their own devices, either a home PC, tablet, phone, if they're coming into your network, make sure you segment those devices off onto a separate protected network. Don't have your backbone switch connect directly to your wireless where you let everybody roam, even the guest network. Make sure those things are segmented off so that you reduce the risk of somebody carrying an infection into you from an already infected machine. Because we have seen these things will spread across the networks, and they will do it as quickly as they can. And again, we're always recommending, we get the question a lot, since you're running antivirus on the firewall, can you skip the antivirus update and the renewal and the cost of that on your PC? Absolutely not. There are still other vectors that those threats can come in. Think thumb drives, think somebody carrying an infected PC into the network. So you still want to make sure you're running antivirus software on all of your endpoints. So with that said, though, we want to make sure we've got as many layers of protection as we can. So with these things in place, let's talk about how you can set up your firewall. And I'm going to be switching back and forth between the firewall and the PowerPoints here. I don't want to bore anybody to death with just running PowerPoints. So excuse me, one of the first things I want to make sure that we cover is that we make sure all of our signatures are always up to date on the firewalls. Now, this is a setting that a lot of people ask and say this really doesn't make sense. Why are automatic updates not turned on all the time? And it's one of those situations where we don't want the box doing anything that you're not in control of. So if you want your updates to happen automatically, there are some scenarios, certain government institutions that require updates to happen offline so they can test them ahead of time. Therefore, if you want automatic updates to happen, let me get into my firewall policy manager here. Easiest way to get into it, any one of your subscription services that require updates will do this. Intrusion prevention, if you go to subscription services, intrusion prevention, that has the least number of clicks, and I'm all about saving clicks because I guess I'm just lazy at heart. But if we look at our update server, your default setting looks like this. Automatic updates are not turned on. So you want to make sure Turn on your intrusion prevention, turn on your gateway antivirus. If you've got the service, turn on your data loss prevention signatures. Default interval of 1 hour should be fine. You don't need to generate any extra traffic above and beyond that, saying that that really is checking too often, and you don't need that many checks going on. Now, with that said, make sure these are going. Make sure you turn on the automatic updates for any of the services. That really should be one of your, I think we covered that in an early webinar, first 5 settings you should cover on any firewall. That should be number 1 on any firewall that you set up. So when we do that, once we have that enabled, we want to make sure intrusion prevention service. Our intrusion prevention service scans for known vulnerabilities, signatures like buffer overflows, cross-site scripting attacks, SQL injection. These are all things that could possibly get that into your network. So we want to make sure on all of your policies, all of your outbound policies, especially the default outgoing policy, if you've left that enabled, we want to make sure that you have intrusion prevention enabled on each of those policies. Now, when you enable the intrusion prevention service, it should turn on, but you do want to double check. And so if we take a quick look at any of my outbound policies here, it's just a simple checkbox. Make sure you've got intrusion prevention services turned on and running for anything outbound. With that, with the intrusion prevention, if you're in a high security environment, you might want to set for anything that is a critical set action. By default, everything is just denied. So let's get back into our intrusion prevention signatures here. It's denied or dropped so that we're no longer getting that. If you want these things to go into a block mode instead of dropping it, we drop the connection, no further communication. If we hit block gives you that by default 20-minute timeout where we reject all further communication from that address, from that URL for the next 20 minutes. Now, the downside to that is if you do have a client on the inside that triggers something, that it is a possibility that they could get blocked themselves. So keep in mind, if you do set it to block, if you have somebody suddenly lose connection to the network, it could be because of this. The other thing that is on my next slide here is for the fast scan versus full scan. By default, we set anything 11.8 or higher, we set the default to be a fast scan. And this is in the setting here with at the top when we enable our intrusion prevention. Default setting is fast scan. Basically, fast scan is designed to improve the throughput and the performance for your intrusion prevention service. By setting it to fast scan, we're basically we scan the initial communication of a connection going in and out, but we don't scan every packet after that. If we set it to full scan, we are scanning every packet coming into and out of the firewall. That will cause some performance delays, so if you're on a low-end box, think the old 25s, 26s, that could cause some performance if you're approaching the maximum number of users that we recommend on any of our boxes. If you've got a box that's not working under heavy load, absolutely set it to full scan, and then you can decide if you want to go back to fast scan if it is too much of a performance hit down the line. So that covers the intrusion prevention service. Let's move on to application control. And this is a hidden little gem inside of our application control. Again, we recommend that application control be turned on all outgoing policies, including the default outgoing policy. But inside of here, let's just jump into my main web surfing rule, and we'll look at the application control. What we want to do is we want to look at this, and if you do in here a quick search for crypto, there is actually under Network Protocols 2, if you pull the category down, it is Network Protocols 2 we're looking at. There is a crypto admin. What this is designed to do is this is designed to block the phone home for the crypto, that if a machine gets infected, first thing it does is it phones home to get an encryption key. And of course, we know that encryption key is a military-grade encryption key that you're going to, if you try and crack it, you're going to spend the next 24 years trying to crack that encryption. So the crypto admin, if you turn that off, this is going to recognize when the crypto locker, crypto wall, those kind of things, it's going to recognize when it phones home and block that communication channel. If the crypto locker virus can't get the encryption key, it's not going to be able to encrypt your files. So that will prevent a lot of malicious activity and save you some heartache and some headache if you can block that phone home. Now keep in mind that this is not 100%, because if somebody gets a laptop infected, as soon as they take that laptop outside of your network, they're going to get infected and they're going to have problems, and then they carry it back in. So again, always keep your virus signatures up to date, everything else on those individual laptops. The other thing that we really recommend is with the ransomware, we've seen certain applications that are responsible for bringing this in. So we also highly recommend that you block access to these other types of things: BitComet, BitLord, BitTorrent, Amule, EasyMule, Emule, Emule Plus. These are going to live in your firewall under the peer-to-peer file sharing. If I clear my search out, I should get those coming back. There's a lot of stuff. If you can block the whole category of peer-to-peer file sharing, you're going to be that much better off. Unfortunately, some of these are actually valid stuff in here. For example, on my network, I can't block the whole category because Blizzard games, World of Warcraft, I don't play World of Warcraft, but some of their other games, and also the Steam file sharing service for video games, all uses the Ares service to download your video games when you buy them on the summer and winter sales and clean out your wallet. So we do recommend that you come in and look at the things like the Emule, there's several of these in here, BitComet, BitLord, some of these other ones. Here is the list. We will make this available to everybody as well, that we have seen crypto locker, crypto wall come from these particular applications. If you can block those on your network without affecting other traffic, make sure you do that. So again, let's jump on WebBlocker. WebBlocker is going to help, because you might not think of WebBlocker as being something to fight crypto, but think about it. If somebody gets a message with a link in it that directs them out, they're foolish enough to click on something, they go out to a website that's been compromised. I've actually talked to partners that have had this happen. Somebody was sent an HTML file. The HTML file just did a hidden redirect to a website, opened it in a 1 pixel by 1 pixel frame, and boom, there you go, they had crypto locker. So in your web blocker, what we recommend is that you block the extended protection sections and the security sections. So we'll back up here, go into my proxy action, go into my web blocker, my default web blocker settings. For the categories, as we scroll down here, extended protection, that contains things: elevated exposure, suspicious content, newly registered websites, emerging exploits. Those all might be important to block. The next section down here, I'm going to throw this in, although it's not in my slide: proxy avoidance. These are the websites that people try and use to get around your content filtering. Turn that on to block those. And then the last one down here is the security section. Things like malicious websites, spyware, phishing keyloggers, bot networks, mobile malware, compromised websites. So even if it's normally a valid website that has been compromised, WebSense is going to pick that up. It's going to add that to their compromised websites category, and you're going to be protected from those. Again, make sure you always check the box to log this action, because you want to see if somebody's been hitting a malicious website, compromised website, something like that. I see this one. I see compromised websites every once in a while on my network here in my demo lab, that somebody's just surfing along and, you know, somebody didn't keep a patch up to date, and so that now we hit a compromised website. That's I've seen that hit several times in my lab here. So as we go back to our slides here, we just want to run through the next section here. Gateway antivirus. Gateway antivirus is going to be important because we do have signatures for most of the variants that are out there. Of course, there's always new variants coming out. So again, we want to make sure the gateway antivirus signatures are up to date so that we keep those turned on. We want to make sure any of your proxies that you're running, the gateway antivirus service does require a proxy. So any of your HTTP, FTP, SMTP, make sure you go in and turn on the antivirus service in those. Let's jump back over to the firewall. When we look at this, the antivirus, it is when a virus is detected, drop the connection immediately. Our other option is to block that. Now, one thing that some people forget to do is antiviruses many times will hide inside a zip file. So your users will get a zip file. As soon as they unzip it, they've gone past your protection. So if you go up to your subscription services, go into your gateway antivirus, and let's look at the configuration on that. There is a setting in here to enable decompression. By default, this is not turned on. This is another one of those that you want to turn on. That way your antivirus service will scan up to 3 levels deep. So a zip within a zip within a zip. We're going to take that apart, and we're going to be able to scan that and look for viruses inside of those zipped files that way. The other thing in here is I do recommend in your body content, in your HTTP responses. This is going back to the webinar we did some time ago, how to make sure the proxies don't break your internet traffic. Let's look inside of my proxy here and go down to my HTTP response. When you look at the content types, and what I'm actually going to do is let's actually add a brand new one so you guys actually see default settings right off the bat. So we look at my client standard HTTP response content types. What this is set to do is by default we have about a dozen application types listed in here. It says if it's matched, allow that. If it doesn't match, allow it through but log it. That's the default setting. That'll let most things through to your network. What I say that you really should be doing is clean up this list. Now there's thousands of different MIME types available out there, but this is by no means an inclusive list right here. So what I tell people to do is remove most of that list. Get your basic stuff. Maybe go even all the way down to just plain text. Now they've proven now that you can put a virus into plain text files. It's pretty rare. You're almost never going to see it, but they've proved in theory that you can do it. So, but in most cases, you know, I will try and save some processing power on my box. So if I can get it down to just a text message, I don't care. I'm going to let the text message through. But anything else, I'm going to AV scan it. I want that traffic to be scanned. I want it to be looked at, and I want to prevent anything from getting in that I can at all. So for your content type, set it to AV scan. And now body content types, this is going to be one of those that is up to you guys to make a business decision on. But our default setting, all of these that are slightly grayed out are disabled. But you will see in here Windows executables and DLL files. If we match that, we're denying it. That prevents anybody from downloading an exe file. That's going to eliminate 99% of the viruses. Now, some people have to make the business decision that, yes, we have to let people in and let them do executables sometimes. If that's the case, again, change your defaults, and in this situation, body content types are looking at the files that you're actually downloading and what you're bringing into the network. I recommend that you set these to AV scan that either way. Whether you match that list or not, we want to AV scan it. Of course, we want to log it. probably, if we detect a virus, we probably want to get an email alert. So that's going to be based off your logging server or your Dimension server or the old logging and reporting if you're still using that. If you detect something, send an email, and that way you're notified that something just tried to come into your network. So let's jump back here. Let's jump on to our reputation-enabled defense. What this is doing is this is basically looking at IP addresses that your users connect to or IP addresses that try and connect to you, and it's looking up in the database. WatchGuard maintains a database that pulls in from multiple different sources, one of those being all of the firewalls that participate in the service, and it says we are going to block anything that has a bad reputation. So all of your HTTP, HTTPS proxy policies, I recommend turning this on. So we come down here to our reputation-enabled defense. You remember this is a brand new clean default setting, so none of this is turned on by default, but we want to immediately block URLs that have a bad reputation. That way, if a website gets compromised, if we see that somebody is a known spammer, it's a known attack site based on the reputation of their IP address, of course we want to log it. We want to immediately block those URLs that have a bad reputation. And alarming, that's setting the alarm. That's up to you. It's how many emails do you want to generate from the firewall. I try and cut those down where I can so I don't get desensitized to them, so I will not alarm off reputation services, although it's not a bad idea. As we go down, so the biggest piece of this, one of the things that we're seeing these days is the new variants of CryptoLocker, CryptoWall, all of the different pieces of ransomware are coming out. They're morphing all the time. They did a study out there, Deakin University did a study and said they found that over 88% of all viruses have morphed at one point or another, which basically means somebody took an existing virus, they repackaged it, they re-encrypted it, they recompiled it, which changes the signature on it, so your antivirus signature is no longer up to date, and you have to have that many more signatures for every variant that comes out. The other problem with signature-based services, so our antivirus is a signature-based service, it is always going to be a step behind. We can't write a signature for something that hasn't been released yet, so there's no way to get ahead of the curve. So with that, that's where our APT blocker comes in. APT blocker uses cloud-based scanning of files to detect zero-day malware. I do want to remind you this is not included in your UTM security bundle. This is an add-on service. But if I were to recommend that you added anything to the firewall, this would be the #1 thing I would recommend that you add to the firewall. This is going to work inside your proxies. It is going to be set up so that anytime a new file hits, if we don't recognize it, if we haven't seen it before, whether that's a Windows executable, a Microsoft Office document, we'll even look at Android APK files if somebody's trying to download that through your firewall. It's going to look at that and say, have we seen this file before? Yes, we've seen it. We know what it is. Go ahead and let it through. Or if we haven't seen it before, it's actually going to send off to Lastline, our technology partner that wrote the service, and it's going to check, has anybody else in the world seen this before? If that's the case, it's the new Java update, something like that, we'll let it through because somebody else has already submitted it for analysis to Lastline. If it is truly a zero-day file, nobody in the world has seen it before, at that point, APT blocker will upload the file to Lastline, and it runs a file analysis. It actually executes the file and looks for things like, does the file phone home to Russia for more instructions? Does it try and auto-start your computer with your computer every time? Does it overwrite Windows system files, or does it try and end virus processes? So the APT blocker, keep in mind it's looking at Microsoft Office documents, PDF files, rich text format, any kind of executable, including SCR, DLL, and then Android APK files. You want to have that on all of your proxies so that you were analyzing those and making sure those come in. As far as the settings go on this, let's jump back to the firewall, and let me cancel out of a few screens here. come back to our subscription services, APT blocker. This is the one that is critical. You want to get alarms for every one of these that comes in. This is going to be zero-day malware. This is the stuff that we know is nasty no matter what. So your default setting does not have the alarm button checked. We do want to make sure you alarm on these. That way, if something comes in, you're getting notified about that coming to your network. Notification settings in here, we want it to set an email, and then make sure it is enabled on all of your policies. This APT blocker is one of the best technologies. LastLine actually won the NSS Labs shootout for breach detection systems, was rated the best of all the systems they've tested out there, and we are licensing it to run on your firewall, so you don't have to pay the $40,000 to $50,000 that it starts at to have a LastLine server on your network. So last little bit here, logging and reporting. We always say visibility is security. Make sure you're using the Dimension dashboard and logs to monitor for malware activity. Make sure you're taking a peek at that once a day. Your security dashboard is going to provide you an overview of blocked malware, what's been happening, what's tried to get into your network. So with that, all of this information that I've been presenting to you guys, it is out on our knowledge base. If you go out to WatchGuard.com, let me make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see it. In fact, we'll just start here. Go to WatchGuard.com, go to the support page, and again, I apologize, we have the fastest website in the world. But if you go to the support page, as we bring that up here, if you do a quick search for ransomware, this will be the first result that will come back. So if you want to get the documentation that I pulled all of this information from, there it is, how to prevent ransomware and other malicious malware with your Firebox. And that'll take you in and walk you through a lot of this stuff that I've gone through today. Here's, you can find the information between the different things, that list of applications that we believe you should block, the torrent series, all of those. That information is out here with a few more details over what I can cover on a quick 30-minute webinar. So with that, thank you guys very much. We are ending actually right on time. That might be a first for these tips and tricks webinars. Again, I want to remind you, please type your questions in. We'll leave the system open for a few minutes so that we can account for people typing in their questions. We also record all of these webinars. They will be posted out to the YouTube page. We try and send a link out. If you want to share this information with anybody else, please feel free to either look up the WatchGuard South Central Tips and Tricks YouTube page where you can get the recording, or go out and grab this document and share it with your technical staff. So with that, I'm going to turn things back over to Elaine. Thank you very much for your attendance, and we'll let you get back to your real work.
Thank you, Dan.